Lately, I've been shopping around for a solid, circular, neutral density filter for use with both video and photography. But I have found this process to be easier said than done because there are lots of ND filters out there from different brands, all claiming to be high quality and superior in one way or another. In the end, I couldn't decide. So instead of getting just one ND filter and wondering forever whether I bought the right one, I made a rather impulsive decision. I decided to try them all. So I acquired 8 solid neutral density filters representing an aggregate of all the top-selling, highest-rated solid NDs across B&H, Amazon, and Adorama. I've been testing and comparing these filters for a couple of weeks, and in this week's video, I'm going to spare you the struggle of choosing an ND filter for yourself by sharing with you everything I've learned. I'm also going to be handing out awards in different categories, including picking one of these filters as the best solid circular ND filter for your money in 2020. Oh, and by the way, as a way of saying thank you to those of you who have helped grow this channel over the past couple of months, I'll be giving away one of the best filters from this review to someone watching this video. Maybe it'll be you. More information on that coming up. How's it going, everyone? My name is Todd Dominey. I make videos about photography, gear, and photo processing here on YouTube. Very excited to be sharing this video with you this week because this one took a lot of time to produce, so it feels really good to be sitting here with you sharing the results from this test. First, I want to get this out of the way and let you know that this video is not sponsored, nor have any of these filters been given to me for free. I also don't have any kind of relationship with any of these companies, so this is a totally fair comparison across the board. The filters I will be comparing today in alphabetical order are the B+W XS-Pro 803, Breakthrough Photography X2, Breakthrough Photography X4, Freewell Quick Swap Magnetic Filter, Gobe, Hoya, PolarPro Quartzline, and finally, Tiffen. In all, 8 3-stop neutral density filters ranging in price from $39 all the way up to $180. If you already know what neutral density filters are and why you would use one, feel free to skip to the timecode displayed above. For everyone else though, neutral density filters are basically sunglasses for your camera lens. You can do things creatively which wouldn't be otherwise possible. For example, slowing down your shutter speed to smooth out motion, most commonly water and clouds in landscape photos. Those slower shutter speeds also come in handy for video when shooting at more natural cinematic frame rates like 24 frames per second at 1/50th of a second. Neutral density filters also make it possible for you to shoot at larger apertures in bright light to give your photos or videos a more dramatic, emotive, shallow depth of field, which in layman's terms just basically means blurry backgrounds. Neutral density filters come in a variety of strengths, typically measured in numerical stops. A 3-stop filter, which is the type of filter I'll be reviewing today, is a good general purpose filter. 6 stops, 8 stops, 10 stops, and higher block more light for even slower shutter speeds. For all types of photography and video, ND filters are an essential piece of gear to own. There are 2 types of ND filters, aluminum and brass. The Hoya, Tiffen, Gobe, Freewell, and Breakthrough Photography X2 are all made of aluminum. The Breakthrough Photography X4, PolarPro, and B+W are made of brass. What's the difference? Well, both are metal, which is obviously better than plastic, but brass has one distinct advantage over aluminum. Brass doesn't get stuck. Aluminum filter threads, when attached to step-up rings, UV filters, or the threads on the front of your camera lens, have a tendency to lock up and get stuck, which can be a real pain if you're on the road traveling and you can't easily separate the ND filter from the step-up ring or the lens. Nearly every filter in this review has a glass coating, which beads water when wet and wipes dry without smearing. The budget Tiffen, on the other hand, doesn't bead and smears when dried. From a design perspective, the most unique filter in this review is undoubtedly the Freewell Quick Swap ND filter. I love its ease of use, for unlike a threaded filter like all the others, this Quick Swap filter can be instantly attached and removed from the front of your camera lens. This seeming feat of magic is accomplished with this magnetized UV filter or a empty attachment ring. Both are magnetized, and you basically just choose one or the other. These rings thread onto the front of your lens, and then you can magnetically attach the ND filter to the front. Oh, and by the way, the Freewell filter also comes with a magnetized lens cap. Pretty cool. Okay, let's look at the first set of test images. For these images, I'm shooting with a Canon 5D Mark IV with the Canon 24 to 70mm f2.8 Mark II. Here is the control image without using an ND filter. And now the same image shot with each ND filter in alphabetical order. First, the B+W XS-Pro, Breakthrough Photography X2, Breakthrough Photography X4, Freewell, Gobe, Hoya, PolarPro, and finally, Tiffen. Now, as you can see, some filters contributed quite a bit of color cast, while others contributed barely any at all. The ones with color cast turn the scene a bit blue, like the Breakthrough Photography X2, or a little yellow like the Tiffen. With digital raw photography, fixing color cast is pretty simple. You would open the file in a photo editor, typically Lightroom or Photoshop or Camera Raw, and then use the white balance eyedropper tool on a neutral color in your scene, like the middle gray square in this X-Rite color checker passport. And then, in theory, all of the ND filtered images should appear very similar to the control. And they do. Here's a quick walkthrough of all previous images with their white balances corrected on the top of your screen and the original control image on the bottom. So what this test proves is that color casts introduced by an ND filter can be corrected fairly easily when shooting digital raw photos, and that sometimes, once corrected, it can be hard to tell the difference between one filter and another. But that's only true with raw digital photography. Video is a little bit different. Editing non-raw video is similar to editing a compressed JPEG image. There's only so much white balance shifting you can do in post before the colors in your footage begin to fall apart. Also, fixing color cast with white balance doesn't mean that colors will then be accurate. Is red, as seen through the ND filter, the same red as the control? Or does the ND filter shift its color to a slightly different red? So to test for color accuracy, I opened up all of the white balanced images in Photoshop and then set their layer blend modes to difference with the control image on the bottom. Then, by sampling each color in the X-Rite color checker passport, I was then able to quantify how much each individual color shifted. The result? Well, in my test, the filters with the least amount of color cast and the most accurate colors were the B+W XS-Pro, the Freewell Quick Swap filter, and the Breakthrough Photography X4. To get a different look at color cast and contrast, I visited a local park on a cold, windy, overcast day. Perfect light though for testing ND filters with this amount of density. Here is the control video shot without an ND filter at 1080 resolution, 24 frames per second, 1/50th of a second shutter speed, ISO 200, and a lens stopped down to an aperture of f11. This footage is straight out of camera without any edits. With an ND filter attached, I was then able to open up the aperture on my lens to f4, which created a more shallow depth of field to help separate me in the foreground from the background. You can especially see this with the blurry tree that's over my shoulder. And now, just like before, video captured with each ND filter in alphabetical order without any color correction applied in post. B+W XS-Pro, Breakthrough Photography X2, Breakthrough Photography X4, Freewell, Gobe, Hoya, PolarPro, and finally, Tiffen. So in this test, the B+W Breakthrough Photography X4, the Freewell magnetic filter, and the PolarPro Quartzline. These 4 filters, I think, produced the least amount of color cast, and I think they also just looked the best too. There's something about the way these filters handled the contrast of the scene and handled the highlights and the shadows. I'm just really impressed with how these 4 filters looked with all of the video footage that I shot outdoors. Next, I want to quickly talk about sharpness, because sharpness is something that all of these ND filters seem to tout in their marketing collateral. And I have to tell you, this part of the review is actually going to be very short because I took a close look at every image from the indoor test in Photoshop by layering them all up and comparing them. And overall, I could find very little difference between these filters. If I had to be picky, the more budget-friendly Gobe and Tiffen do appear to be a touch softer than the rest of these filters, but that's really about it. I wasn't able to see any noticeable decrease in sharpness or clarity with any of these other filters. Every lens displays some amount of natural vignette. It's just part of how the optics of lenses and cameras have always functioned. So when testing for vignette with ND filters, we're not looking to see whether any vignette exists, but rather how much additional vignette is contributed by the presence of an ND filter being attached to the front of the lens. For this test, I shot a large piece of photo paper using this 24 to 70mm lens set to f2.8 and using a focal length of 50mm. At 50mm, none of these filters appear to have any issue with vignette. So let's try something a little bit harder. I'm going to use the super wide angle setting of 16mm full frame on this 16 to 35mm lens. And to attach these filters, I'm going to use a 77 to 82mm step-up ring because the filter thread on this 16 to 35mm lens is just a little bit smaller than the 24 to 70. This should be a challenging test for the filters because not only are we shooting super wide, full frame, but also because the filters will be positioned just a few millimeters away from the front of the lens because of this step-up ring. To help you see the difference between the images, I'm going to flip back and forth between the control and each one of the ND filtered images. First, the B+W XS-Pro, Breakthrough Photography X2, Breakthrough Photography X4, Freewell, Gobe, Hoya PRO-ND, PolarPro Quartzline, and finally, Tiffen. So there are some very interesting results from this test. First, the Gobe, Tiffen, and Breakthrough Photography X2 filters added the most vignette across the surface area of the image. Second, some of these filters exhibited a more serious problem that I was talking about earlier, known as mechanical vignette, which is vignette that is caused by the filter itself blocking light. That kind of vignette can typically only be removed by cropping a photo or video. At 16mm with a step-up ring, the PolarPro Quartzline shows just a touch of mechanical vignette in the corner. The Hoya PRO-ND shows a bit more because this is one of the thicker ND filters in this review. And then there is the Freewell magnetic filter. Now, this result comes with a pretty big asterisk on it because As I explained before, the Freewell filter is a magnetic filter, not a threaded one. So in this setup, it is using both my step-up ring, the magnetic attachment ring, and then the ND filter after that. So when you put all three of these things together, it creates a really thick grouping of filters that, I mean, when attached to the front of a wide-angle lens like this, I mean, no wonder it has the kind of problems that it does, and you're able to see those black corners on it because it just sticks out from the front of the lens so much that it's blocking that wide angle field of view at 16 millimeters. I actually contacted Freewell and I spoke with someone there, and they pointed me in the direction of these magnetized step-up rings. So with those magnetized step-up rings, their ND filter would then be just as thin as the other filters in this review, actually thinner than the Hoya filter. And the reason that is because then you wouldn't need this third magnetized ring which comes with the filter anymore. You would just use the magnetized step-up ring and then attach their ND filter directly to it. And when you do that, then the ND filter is just as thin as the others, so its performance should be just as good. But unfortunately, that means that the Freewell filter will have to be disqualified from this test because it wouldn't be fair to judge it against the other filters without the proper step-up ring. As for the rest of the filters, the top filter with the least amount of vignette was the B+W XS-Pro, followed very closely behind by the Breakthrough Photography X4. All right, now it's the time you've been waiting for. It's time to announce the winners. First, the winner for Best Packaging and Brand Experience goes to the PolarPro Quartzline. This filter comes in this large, beautifully designed box, which, I mean, looks like an award unto itself with how it opens and reveals the ND filter case inside. The filter case, by the way, is made of this just, very durable plastic, and it has a magnetized clasp on it as well, making it really easy to open and close. And you could easily travel with this and sling this around in your camera bag, and your ND filter will be very protected in this case. It's so much better than the cheap, clear plastic boxes most of these other filters came with, including the two most expensive filters in this review, the B+W and the Breakthrough Photography X4. The latter of which introduces itself with this strange warning sticker on the front, like you're about to break the seal on something dangerous. The PolarPro packaging, on the other hand, is beautiful, inspiring. It makes you feel like you've purchased something premium and special. This is expensive packaging, and I'm sure it's eating into PolarPro's profit margins with these ND filters. But in the long run, I mean, from a brand perspective, I think it's so worth it because it communicates attention to detail, quality design, and honestly, it makes me want to own everything they sell. Next award, Best Value for the Money. This award goes to the filter which also happens to be the cheapest, the Tiffen. Yes, it has a fairly strong love it or hate it color cast and noticeable vignette on a wide angle lens, but at $39, I mean, it's a pretty decent option for the money. Personally, I'd rather invest in a quality filter and use that filter for years and years, but if you're on a budget, it'll do the job. Next award, Most Innovative. Hats off to Freewell for designing such a clever system and for thinking through all the things a photographer might need in addition to the ND filter, including a free UV filter, a lens cap, and those magnetized step-up rings I mentioned earlier. It really is a complete system that you buy into. It also, rather surprisingly, has a decent case, which is important if you are, taking the magnetic filter on and off the front of the lens. It's a really nice case, and again, so much better than these cheap plastic ones. And I have to admit, I was somewhat suspicious of it being magnetized and whether it could really stick to the front of a lens, but I mean, look at this. I mean, the magnets, don't get me wrong, they're not super strong. I mean, you can just, take this thing right off. But what you want to do is when you get this magnetized ring on, you want to make sure it's don't just kind of flop it on there like this. Just kind of like put it on and then just kind of push around it a little bit just to make sure that it clicks in and it really is in there. Because once it's in there, I mean, you can shake this all day long. You could bump the lens around the camera. I'm sure I'm probably giving people at Freewell a bit of a heart attack right now watching me do this. But really, I mean, the magnets are strong enough to where you could use it on a gimbal, you could shoot, just freehand with it, handheld, I mean, and once it's on there, and it's not coming off unless you take it off. So, hats off to Freewell, really clever system. Next award, easiest filter to use in cold weather while wearing gloves. Seriously, for landscape photography, it's a thing. This award is a tie between the PolarPro Quartzline and the Breakthrough Photography X4. I took all of these filters on and off a bunch of times during this review, including outdoors while wearing thick gloves. And I'm telling you, these filters were so much nicer to use than their thin, aluminum, smooth counterparts. All right, and now the moment you've all been waiting for, the award of the night, Best ND Filter. This award goes to the B+W XS-Pro 803. Overall, this filter had the least amount of color cast, the most accurate colors, barely any optical vignette, and no mechanical vignette when used on a super wide-angle lens. It's also made of brass, which means you should never have a problem removing it from a lens. Its neutral color cast, high color accuracy, and non-existent vignette makes it an ideal filter for shooting video. For landscape photographers who shoot at super wide angles, you will get the least amount of vignette with this filter attached to your lens. I have to admit, I'm kind of disappointed by this result. I mean, I was really hoping a different filter would win and prove that sometimes you can get better quality at a lower price. But that's not the case here. The B+W filter is the most expensive filter in this review, costing $180. But unfortunately, it also happens to be the best. But you know what? Let's hand out one more award. Highest quality at the lowest price. That award goes to the PolarPro Quartzline. This filter costs $130, 30% less than the B+W, and provides fantastic color accuracy and minimal vignette. It's also made of brass, has that awesome etched ring that I just love. Comes with this beautiful case, and it has a lifetime warranty compared to the 10-year warranty of the B+W. So, unless you have to have the absolute best, the PolarPro Quartzline provides the biggest bang for your buck. Which may leave some of you wondering about another high-performing filter in this review, the Breakthrough Photography X4. This filter performed nearly as well as the B+W, is also made of brass, and has that really nice etched ring around the outside like the PolarPro. It also uses high-quality German shot glass, which the winning B+W filter also uses. But the X4 retails for $169, which is just a hair cheaper compared to the B+W, and almost $40 more than the PolarPro. It performed brilliantly in the color cast, accuracy, and vignette tests, but in my opinion, not quite as good as the B+W for nearly the same price. Don't get me wrong, the X4 is a fantastic filter. I would be perfectly happy owning and using it. But let's put it this way. If the B+W wasn't included in this review, the X4 would have won. Okay, so as I said at the top of the video, as a way of saying thank you to everyone who helped grow this channel over the past couple of months, I'm going to be giving away one of the 3 best filters from this review. The Freewell Quick Swap, Breakthrough Photography X4, or the PolarPro Quartzline. All fantastic premium ND filters. And if you win, the choice is yours. To enter this giveaway, all you have to do is leave a comment below. Say anything you want, but if you're looking for inspiration, how about a favorite quote from a family member, author, photographer, musician, whatever? Drop a comment below to enter the contest. Liking this video and subscribing to this channel isn't necessary to enter, but it would be appreciated. This contest will remain open for a month, and then I'll announce the winner in a video on Friday, March 13th. There's more about this contest in the description below if you're interested in the official rules. That's it, and good luck. Please, remember to give this video a thumbs up if you found it to be informative, if you learned something from it, and also subscribe to keep in touch. I'll see you next time.